What's up? So today we're looking at the high scope Perry Preschool Study, one of the most famous longitudinal studies, and hopefully you learned a lot reading through it. So if you have your notes out, we're on page 4. We're looking at just a few things involved in this study. So the first thing is like how was the study set up? It was done in the 1960s, and they were looking at, is there value to providing a high quality preschool education to at-risk kids, low income, high risk? And so this kind of worked together with the Head Start program. We mentioned that yesterday from 1965 from Johnson's Great Society programs. And so this study was done in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is by Ann Arbor. And looking at some of the particulars here, they took 123 low-income, high-risk kids. So these are kids that would not normally go to preschool. These are kids from homes that they didn't have access to books or educational material probably, and things were looking bleak. Ages 3 to 4, they put 58 kids in their program, and the other 65 were not. And this was done pretty randomly. The only reason it wasn't truly random is because they wanted to make sure that siblings were either all in the program or all not in the program, so they didn't contaminate the control group. And so they're just talking here about this part here. It says when they looked at the achievements test scores for 14-year-olds, just it was amazing to these people that this is a longitudinal study, right? So they followed the same kids actually from when they were 3-4 years old all the way till 40 and beyond. And they weren't originally planning on doing that. It just kept, their findings kept pushing them towards continuing. And what they found was that the older the person got, the more impact the preschool program seemed to have. So the impact in early elementary was the kids, they'd have a better attitude about school. Obviously, they had some performance things where they were better academically, like you'd expect, but it wasn't like earth-shattering, how much better they were. But this kind of goes along. I read a different study where it said, like, if kids aren't at reading level, grade level for reading by second grade, they never catch up. And so this program's equipping these kids to, instead of starting kindergarten where they don't know letters, they know nothing, and there's kids in the class who are on their way to reading or reading already, this is giving these kids a fighting chance. So let's take a look at just what they found when they looked at these kids when they were in their late 20s, age 27. So maybe you found this remarkable like I did. So for those kids who were in the program, only 7% had been arrested 5 times or more. And that's just amazing to be 27, be arrested more than 5 times. So 7%. Whereas for the kids who weren't in the program, the control group, it was 35%. So 5 times more were arrested 5 times or more. Which is, incredible. Earnings. So those in the program, 29% were making at least $2,000 a month. So that's only 24 grand a year. That's not a ton of money for sure. So this is like, so they'd be 27. So this would be, in the 80s or so when this update was done. So, I mean, there's significant inflation since then, but um, only 7% of those not in the program were making $2,000 a month or more, which is, poverty. Home ownership, 36% of those in the program owned a home, whereas only 13% in the control group. Those who could afford a second car, 30% in program, 13% in control. 59% of those in the program had at one point or another drawn from welfare, whereas 80%, 8 out of every 10, in the control group. For as far as education, 71% of those in program graduated, whereas 54%, or roughly half, in the no program. But for females, this was even greater. 88% of the females in the program graduated, whereas only 46% in the control group. And I think a lot of that has to do with teen pregnancy, probably, which isn't reported here. But that would be a big reason for females to not graduate, as if they got pregnant during high school. Then marriage, 40% of the women at age 27 were married. Only 8% in those in the control group. And then single parent, 57% of women in the program were single parents, which is, again, overwhelming to think about. But 83% of those in the control group were single parents. 83%, 5 out of every 6. It's just sad. So hard to know what to even do about that. Then looking at the cost benefit analysis from age 27, so I highlighted this. So basically looking at higher earnings, reduced incidences of special ed, welfare assistance, crime, because it costs money to incarcerate people. Every public dollar spent on the program saves $7.16 in tax dollars. And so what this should tell you is that if you want to invest in people, if you want to make your society and your community better, which you should, because that's our mandate as Christians, to love our neighbor, then you should find ways to invest in programs that help kids, young kids. Young kids can be, it's a lot easier to help a young kid and have them do well than it is to take someone who's been in prison 5 times and rehabilitate them, because they've made so many poor choices already. So this should be a huge encouragement for us now, to invest in children any way we can, and to be thankful for the education and the blessings we have. I'm going to post the follow-up article on this for the 40-year follow-up, so you can see those statistics as well. So the other article I asked you to read was on this idea, this woman, I think Judith Harris, wrote a book about how parents really didn't have that much effect on children. It was all nature and no nurture. And that kind of flies in the face of the Bible, which says, train up the child in the way he or she should go, and when the child is older, they won't depart from it. And the Bible is very specific about the role of parents and the weightiness of being a parent. I mean, every time there's a baptism, right, the parents have to vow that they're going to do everything in their power to um, bring their child up in the gospel. And you think of like Deuteronomy, I think 6, where the command is for parents to teach their children about God. Uh, it says on there, down sitting and uprising, and when they walk in the way, basically any opportunity you have. And so I shared that article so that you could read kind of the rebuff against it, against the idea that parents have, its peers play a difference or play a role, but parents don't. And then the idea of neuroplasticity or synaptic plasticity, um, where you have these synapses in your brain and they're constantly changing. And obviously parents play a role in that, as do peers. So the environment obviously plays a role in intelligence and development, because the different situations and places you are synaptically change your brain for good or for ill. What I want to share with you next is a TED Talk by Meg Meeker. And I was given a book by Meg Meeker, Dr. Meg Meeker, on the importance of fathers to daughters, since I have 4 daughters. And I thought it was very well written. And this is her talk on fathers and their importance to children. And this reinforcing the biblical mandate, the biblical importance of parents and fathers in particular. And so to the young men watching, who, if God blesses, could be fathers in the future, and to the young women, you may, well, how does this apply? I mean, well, as a, if someday you're blessed in marriage and you have children, your role is to encourage your husband to be a godly father, and the great importance that has on the well-being of children. So we're going to watch this. And
good morning. What a wonderful segue into my talk. As a young woman once and a mom now, I understand that dads have an enormous role to play in the healthy self-esteem of their daughters. So this is a beautiful, beautiful teeter-totter. We have a crisis in our culture. We live among it. Sometimes we participated in it. We add to it. We laugh at it. We think it's kind of fun. It has become just sort of the norm of our lives, which is to dad bash. In the 1970s and then in the 1980s, we began using fathers as the butt of many of our jokes, and it was kind of fun. As we women gained influence and we worked harder at school and we championed ourselves and our fathers came behind us and championed us, along the way, many of us, as we started to feel better about what we were doing, we pushed our dads to the side and they became marginalized. And then those who are in advertising and media and so forth found out that there was a lot of money to be made by capitalizing on this. But this is a very, very serious problem in our culture. I put together a few clips just for you, because many of you may be sitting here, come on, what are you talking about? I've read some funny dad jokes on the internet, but is what you're talking about really that prevalent? I put together at random just some typical clips from...
Right, so we're gonna kind of skip ahead here. I'll show you the last one, which is just an advertisement. But it's true that there's a theme in our media culture that portrays fathers as less than or unneeded or unintelligent.
Good toss. See, that's much better. That was good. You had your shoulder pointed, you kept your eyes on your target. Let's do it again. Watch me. Just like that one.
The durability of the Volkswagen Passat. Passed down something he will be grateful for.
It's funny. It's very, very funny. But when was the last time you saw a dad portrayed as a hero in an advertisement or a movie? The last time that I can think of that was in The Pursuit of Happiness, when dad was actually a hero. Now, you see, this is funny, but for me as a pediatrician who learned many years ago that if I want to do something important for children, I had to help their parents, because once I help a mom and a dad, I don't have to worry about the kids. This is a very important issue for me, because while we laugh, it becomes part of us. We too start to laugh about dads. Kids are watching this. Kids begin to look at their dads as the butt of all jokes. If you could just sit in my office and see how kids talk to their dads, it's phenomenal. Dads are not respected, they're not revered, and it's an enormous problem. Why? Am I just making a big deal? Maybe I'm just kind of a stuffy person making a big deal about nothing. Let me tell you why this is really a national crisis. Because dads are the central figure in the identity formation of a child. Think about this. Think about when you were a child. Children, boys and girls, when they're young, when they're older, teenagers, even as adults, their identity is shaped by interacting with their fathers and their mothers, but we're talking about dads today. Kids watch their dads. They read their dads' faces, and they read their body language, and they're looking at their fathers, not because they care that much about their dads, because kids aren't that nice. They're very self-centered. They're looking at dad because they're trying to figure out some things about themselves. What are they trying to figure out? They look at their dads to say, Dad, do you see me today? Do you see me in the kitchen? What do you think about me? Men, when you walk in the door after work, your daughter knows and your son knows within 15 seconds what kind of a day you had. Not because they care about you, but because they need to know whether they should stay in the room or not. Right? If you've had a bad day, they're out. But they're constantly searching you because they need to figure out some things about themselves. Identity formation. A father plays a crucial role in a child's identity formation. The reason we cannot afford to bash our dads anymore is because it breaks children. The best research shows that toddlers who are securely attached to their dads are better at solving problems. The best research shows that if a girl is struggling with her self-esteem, the best thing you can do for her is not sign her up for better soccer or find her a better ballet team or hire her a tutor so her grades are better. The best research shows that the best way to boost a girl's self-esteem is for her to receive physical affection from her dad. Best way to boost a girl's self-esteem. Dads, when was the last time you hugged your daughters? The best research shows that when kids grow up with a dad in the home, not a stellar dad, not a perfect dad, a good enough dad in the home, kids are less likely to struggle with depression and anxiety, learning disorders. They're more likely to graduate from high school, go on to college, and go on to graduate schools. They're far less likely to be in drugs, alcohol, and sex at an early age. In short, dads are phenomenal for children. Finally, we know that the best research, a study started with 90,000 kids across the United States, looking at the factors operating in a teenager's life that keep them out of trouble. The number one factor keeping kids on the straight and narrow was not their peers, and it wasn't the school they were in or the church they attended. It was something called parent connectedness. Dad connectedness, mom connectedness. What is this all about? If we can just dig a little deeper and look at why the research is bearing out that dads are the crucial component to healthy children, it makes sense. The identity of a child is formed by watching dad, by reading dad's face. Why? Because every child needs 3 questions answered by mom and by dad. Dads have an authority in a child's life that is unmatched by any other person. Every child, whether they're 5 or 15 or 55, looks to their father to have 3 questions answered. 1, Dad, what do you believe about me? What do you think about me? Am I good? Am I smart? Am I capable? Am I dumb? Am I stupid? And kids answer those questions by reading your face and your body language. 2, Dad, how do you feel about me? Am I lovable? Am I good? Do you like me? Are you ashamed of me? Are you embarrassed by me? 3, Dad, what are your hopes for me? Do you have hopes for me? Do I have a future, Dad? Kids who don't have those questions answered by their fathers live in chaos. I know this, I see this, you know men like this. Our prisons are filled with men whose spirits are crushed because they never had those questions answered by their dads. And we go home and we laugh at this stuff because dads, come on, are just dads. When I was 16, I decided I was going to go to medical school. My dad was a pathologist. I knew right away I didn't want to be a pathologist because he looked at dead body parts the entire day, and I was not about that. But he had a friend who was an orthopedic surgeon, and I thought what this guy did was amazing. This man brought me into the operating room, and I just thought that was it. So from 16 to 21, all I did was focus on going to medical school. Graduated college, sent off all my applications. I was living in Boston, very, very competitive. And one after another rejection or ding letter, which is really a nice term because it felt crushing to me, came to my house. And after the final rejection came, I was convinced at 21 my life is over. I had no plan B. I had no backup plan. And I went out for a jog to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? This is bad. And I went out and I walked back into my house and I overheard my dad talking on the phone in his study, which was unusual because my dad was kind of an eccentric man. He was very much an introvert. He didn't talk on the phone a lot. And as I walked by his den, heard him on the phone, I heard him say my name. So, because I'm a healthy young woman, I eavesdropped. I stopped outside of his door and I listened to him. And I heard my dad say, yep. My daughter Meg is going to be going to medical school in the next couple of years. And I thought to myself, what is he talking about? And then I thought, surely he's paid somebody off. But I will tell you the feeling that I had standing outside of my dad's door is a feeling I can capture now, standing on the stage at age 57. Why? Because in that moment, my dad answered 3 very important questions for me. What do I believe about you? When you set your mind to something, you fly, and nothing can stop you. He believed where I couldn't believe. That's the power of a dad. How do you feel about me? I'm crazy about you. I always have your back. And what are your hopes for me? I hope that your dreams will be fulfilled. I know that your dreams will be fulfilled. I want to tell you, Dad, something. Years later, my dad's voice resonated in my head and in my heart as I wrote my first book and my second and my third and finally my 6th. And when I went to my dad several years ago, and I told him about that time, my dad didn't remember having that phone call in his office. You get it? Dads change children's lives. When you change a child's life, you change the family structure. If a child doesn't have those questions answered from their dads, they live in chaos. I know this. I've been invited to work with some professional athletes because these men don't know how to be fathers. You know why, they told me? They don't know what dads do. They don't know what dads say. They don't know if dads are nice or good or kind or mean or embarrassed of them or ashamed, because they never knew their dads. They don't know where to start. But that's the least of their problems. The biggest problem they have is that internally their soul is in chaos because they don't know the answers to their questions that their heart needed to ask. I want to just point out one thing too. Those questions are not answered on soccer fields and baseball fields. They're not answered in concert halls. They're not answered as we drive our kids around to all these athletics. And they're not answered on a college campus. They're answered as kids live life next to a good man. Period. Are we missing it? Yeah, we're missing it. I started talking to you about how we're deriding dads, marginalizing dads, and we women, myself included, are leading the pack. I'm not here pointing fingers. I went to an all-women's college in the 1970s, and I will tell you, we had quite a ride, and we led the pack in proving that we could outdo men at everything. And ladies, wives, moms, sisters, aunts, we got to knock off the dad bashing. You want a game changer in our culture? Let's bring back some respect for our dads. Let's refuse to buy the Father's Day cards that only talk about hogging channel changers and drinking too much beer. Right? Because it's crushing our kids. I started my talk with something that is not real life. I gave you videos of the persona that we have created year in and year out over the funny dad, the stupid dad, the dumb dad, that all live in our houses, and we wives need to teach them a lesson or two. And if we forget, of course there are 11-year-old children to come along and tell dad how homework is to be done. If not, how he's to run a cell phone, right? But that's not real life. That is not real life. I want to show you clips now of dads in real life. That's real. Every person in this audience within earshot of my voice has a responsibility to the child in your life that you love, whether it's your own child, whether it's your niece or your nephew, your grandchild, a child that you just know. We have a responsibility to restore respect and honor and a rightful position to every dad in America. You want to be a game changer? You want to change our country and our culture? Change our families by changing our kids. And ladies and gentlemen, it all begins with our mouths and how we speak to the good men in our lives. Thank you.
There you go. So hopefully that gave you some insight on the power of fathers specifically to counteract that reading that parents don't make a difference. So I think you can see that parents make a lot of difference. And if you have good parents, that's this unmeasurable blessing from God. Yeah, you can't imagine how much different your life would be if you didn't have good parents. So a lot to think about there.